Now get ready. Here we go.
What is going on, guys? It is Arkham, and we have another ranking video. We have finally made it to the end of the season for the 2024 season of amusement parks, and now we get to rank the Six Flags Great Adventure Coasters 2024 edition. That's right. Every year we're going to do this ranking, and from here on out. And in this ranking, we are going to discuss the roller coasters of Great Adventure. There were 14 this season, so we're ranking all 14. Obviously, pending the already happened removals of Ka and Green Lantern, they will be both on this list because they were roller coasters that I rode this season. So, with all that being said, this is the top 14 at Six Flags Great Adventure. Hope you enjoy. Kicking it off at the number 14 spot is the typical standard kiddie coaster, the Little Devil Coaster. I mean, it's the same layout as just about every other kiddie coaster on planet Earth. Just ask any other park in the vicinity of that. And there really isn't much to say about it. It's a great beginner coaster. Basically, all you have to do to ride it is you have to be able to walk. I mean, that's kind of the only rule. They don't really matter too much when it comes to the height, unless that changed. But otherwise, Little Devil, quick and easy, number 14. Coming up next on the list at number 13 is the Harvey Quinn Crazy Train, located right at the very back of the park, directly next to the Joker. A fun little ride in itself. It definitely had its fair share of things happen to it during the season, but obviously throughout the rest of the season, it did run pretty well. Obviously, the back row is the way to go on these kind of rides. It's not the only ride of its type. I know there's one up in New England as well under a different name. But this is definitely a good enough family coaster as well and serves fine here at this spot. Next up at number 12 is probably the biggest disappointment of the season for me, and that is Skull Mountain. Especially this ride for me has just been on a continuous downward trend, unfortunately. Over the past season, first off, this ride opened up later in the season. I think it opened around Memorial Day weekend, which already is not a great sign for it. And all they did is basically just throw a bunch of lights in it, turn it into a spooky, scary skeleton disco party ripoff, and then suddenly said, yeah, we're going to get rid of all the spooky rock music that's played in the entrance when you board the ride. We're going to get rid of that spooky or whatever that ridiculous sound is at the beginning that makes the ride so memorable, and the rock music inside. Yeah, it's all gone. No special effects inside outside of a light show that definitely I would not want to participate in because it's themed to skeletons. But in all honesty, like, this ride really has just been nothing but a disappointment. I really believe if they were going to get rid of a ride to actually make way for a better ride, this one's probably going to be next. Although I don't see them getting to this ride just right now, primarily because this ride is a people eater. There are so many people that will come to this ride to ride it, and people will wait for it. So the dispatches are pretty solid all around, but the ride itself, again, the first drop is like the most memorable thing, and the being in the last row on that drop is really nice. Everything else, it's just kind of boring. I've kind of gotten really bored of this ride, to be honest with you. Sorry, but it's going here at 12. Just barely missing the top 10 here at number 11 is the Dark Knight Coaster, which is a indoor wild mouse coaster. This was the last ride I expected to be anywhere closer to the top 10, especially for it being a wild mouse. But actually, this ride I felt like has been doing much better just from a more visual standpoint of inside theming, or at least an attempt at it. And also, bringing back the pre-show recently has also really elevated the whole atmosphere and the idea of this ride a lot better than Skull Mountain did. Hence why I put it above it. And I really think that this ride does need a little bit more attention. Obviously, there's still nothing is exactly perfect with the ride. However, I think a much better attempt has been making to try to make Dark Knight Coaster at least better than its previous other rides in the park, and I do appreciate the efforts, which is why I'm putting it here at 11. Now we start getting to the part where the list gets difficult. Number 10, the Runaway Mine Train. Easily the best family coaster here at Great Adventure right now. And for this ride being open with the park, like 3 days after the park opened, is incredible with the way that this ride has been running. Runaway Mine Train, great family coaster, solid layout. I don't exactly know how long it's going to last for. I hope it lasts for like ever, but this is a really special ride that is completely neglected by the GP. This is a ride you need to be sure to get on because it is a phenomenal family coaster. Really good laterals throughout. It's not a long ride by any stretch of the means, but I mean, the visuals are stunning. It's got a great finale. That ridiculously crazy airtime hill that tries to kill you is insane. Sit in row 2, and yeah, you're gonna get sent. This ride deserves more respect than it gets. Trust me. Get over here to ride Runaway Mine Train next season because you will not regret it. Now the list is about to flip on its head at number 9, the Joker. The ride that everybody sees directly at the front of the park when you first enter, and it's kind of mid, depending on how you ride it, that is. If you know how to ride it, you'll get a lot of flips. If you don't, you're not going to get a lot of flips. But there are people that either like this ride or really despise this ride. And I've kind of been on the fence about it. For me, it just depends on how many flips I get. If you know the way to do it, if you know how to kick your feet properly on this ride, you're going to get a lot of good flips. It's really just a lot of knowledge of knowing when those fins show up, so that way you know the direction it's going to flip. So it's a whole guessing game in itself, and obviously every ride is different from one another, so the randomness factor of it obviously does take it down a little bit, but it still made the top 10. It sits here at number 9 now. Making it at the number 8 spot is Superman Ultimate Flight in the Boardwalk section of Six Flags Great Adventure, and this ride sucks. Okay, that's a little harsh. But yeah, this ride is definitely a disappointment. I'm not a fan of these kind of rides, mainly because I've only ridden this kind of ride, and that's the only one I haven't done. I've never done Tatsu, I've never done Manta, so I don't know much about flying coasters except through this. And if this is my first introduction to flyer coasters, I'm pretty disappointed. It's literally sits in the parking lot. There's no theming outside of signs and wondering who the heck this guy still is. But other than that, it's an okay ride. The pretzel loop saves this ride, and I think every other enthusiast that were to ride it each year would say the exact same thing. The pretzel loop saves it. That's really the honest reality of it. It's saved by the pretzel loop. It's just a bunch of meandering around in an uncomfortable position. I really hope a Vekoma flyer gets made somewhere else that's not on the other side of the planet for me. But yeah, this is number 8. It ain't going any higher than this. And at the number 7 spot is its neighbor, Green Lantern. The only difference between Superman and Green Lantern is that this ride's actually getting removed.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
That was a little low, wasn't it? Well, anyway, Green Lantern, in my personal opinion, is actually a better ride than Superman. So that's kind of how it stands in my opinion. Yeah, I'm bummed that it's going away. I'm not going to be able to ever ride it again. R.I.P. Shining Green Lantern. But at the end of the day, I think the ride itself, the layout is fantastic. It has great elements. It really had the potential to be a great sit-down looper or even a floorless layout. But obviously, we already have a floorless coaster in the park, so we don't really need this. So, I mean, they could have made it a sit-down coaster for all I know. People are like, oh, put surf trains on it. No, you can't do that because it's way too tight of element. But in my personal opinion, I still think the layout is what makes this ride better than Superman. It still is on the rougher end for me. I still was not a fan of the ride itself. But I think what this ride did was already better than what Superman ever would accomplish. I also think that if it were to stay around and they were to kind of do a mass retracking to it and then rebuild it, I think people wouldn't mind it that much. But at the end of the day, I would have been a big fan if they did that. But honestly, I also respect the decision to fully remove it and just let something new go in its place. I'm going to miss Lantern because that's kind of the sightline I've grew up watching this whole time. But I'm also very eager to see what they replace it with. and hopefully it is something even better than what Green Lantern offered. But number 7 is a pretty respectable spot for Green Lantern, if you ask me. Coming in now at the number 6 spot, might be a bit of a shocker to you, but who knows? Medusa. In the very back of the park at Six Flags Great Adventure in the Frontier Adventure section. I like this forest coaster a lot. It is currently my favorite forest coaster that I've ever ridden at the moment, and I thoroughly enjoy this ride for what it is. I remember it as Bizarro, and even now as the new Medusa. I still think this is a great roller coaster. It didn't run as well as I would have liked it to and compared to other seasons, but I still think Medusa is a favorable attraction. The fire wasn't working this season, but I hope that maybe for next season we will see the fire effect working, hopefully for the entirety of the season. It seemed like that they were doing some work during Fright Fest to try to get it up and running, but we might see it again for 2025, which would be a very nice quality of life change for that ride. I think this is a ride that's kind of going through a bit of an identity crisis at the moment, mainly because I feel like there was gonna be a lot more happening to the theming, but we never fully got that theming, unfortunately. Like, all the buildings are still left over from Bizarro, and they're just painted with like a template orange. The sign looks really nice at the front entrance, but they didn't do anything to the backside. It's still that same weird orange. So hopefully they kind of take the time to look at this ride and they maybe put a little more emphasis on it, especially if they're going to keep it around in the next 5-10 years, which is really the big question mark. I could see that if they don't do anything with this ride over the next 2 years, I could see this ride as a potential ride on the chopping block and replace with something even better, like another sort of inverting looping coaster, whether it is by B&M, whether it's by another manufacturer, no matter who it is. I think that this ride could be in danger just because they aren't doing any more efforts to try to make it better. But we'll see what happens next season with Medusa. Otherwise, it's still a great roller coaster. It just barely misses the top 5 because I think there's a B&M coaster that's a little bit more intense than this one. We have made it to the top 5, and number 5 is the B&M Invert Batman the Ride. Definitely the shortest B&M invert I have done, but it's also the shortest in terms of height looping coaster in the park outside of Jersey Devil. And my gosh, this is a perfect example of a ride that is tiny but mighty. Don't let the height of a ride fool you, because this ride just made the top 5 at one of the greatest parks that has a fantastic coaster lineup. I mean, you could kind of make an argument about making that discussion right now because of the circumstances, but at the end of the day, wow. The intensity this ride has is undeniable. You gotta get on Batman the Ride when you can. 5 great inversions, whippy, fast, tight, compact in some certain scenarios. The helix is crazy. I mean, this ride is super intense. You sit in the back. I like sitting back left on this ride, and it is fantastic. I love this ride to every ounce of bits. I try to do it every time I go to the park because it's a ride that is truly incredible. One of the best cloned coasters out there, in my personal opinion. And honestly, this ride was just running so good this season, and it really deserves to make it here at the number 5 spot. Now we've made it to the hardest part of this list, and that is the top 4. Great Adventure has what is probably some of the best standout roller coasters currently, especially in 2024. All 4 of these rides that I'm about to rank from 4 to 1 could be considered the best in the park if, say, there was only one of them, because that's how good this lineup of coasters are, and also just how good these rides are. Unfortunately, I have to put one of them at number 4, but they easily could be number 1 for somebody else. And for number 4 spot, I have chosen Nitro. And I really had to nitpick on this decision, especially throughout the whole season. One of the greatest benefits compared to some of the other rides on this list is that it's open all year, essentially, from the very start of the season all the way through holiday in the park, which is super nice. However, this ride crawls in the morning. Not only that, but they front load during holiday in the park, which is something I was not a big fan of, hence why I actually put it here at number 4. because 9 times out of 10, when it runs really slow, they need to make sure that they run it with the trims off, at least in my personal preference. Now, that's probably a safety reason why they can't do that. However, if it's super cold out on a certain day, or it's like on the cusp of staying open and whatnot, they need to make sure those trims stay off, because that's the only way that they'll be able to finish a cycle with this thing. But when this thing is warmed up, especially in the summertime, my gosh, does this ride haul. And it runs so fast. Basically, that helix towards the end of the ride is essentially a gray out moment in really hot weather. And all in all, it's still a very fun ride. I love riding Nitro. I just go on, it's just to have a good time on it. This is one of those rides that's super easy to get into coasters because it's just fun. Nitro is just pure fun. So it easily makes the number 4 spot, but a lot of the other rides after this one really just comes down to intensity and just overall ride experience, which is why Nitro is here. My first ever RMC roller coaster comes in at the number 3 spot, the Jersey Devil Coaster. Yeah, this ride is so good in the summer. I still feel like, personally, outside the fact that this ride still doesn't have double-sided lockers, and it should have double-sided lockers by next season, but I personally think this is probably the best roller coaster during Holiday in the Park, if it's running at its fullest potential, which this year it was not, because it was only running basically 1 or 2 trains for the most part throughout the entirety of the season. So from an operational standpoint, this ride was running like hot garbage. However, the ride itself should not be mistaken for its unfortunate circumstances, because this ride still hauls like crazy. It is Godspeed fast. It feels fast. The inversions are fun. The ride is super duper tight, and all of its turnarounds. The Rose Bowl is crazy. The drop off of that is crazy. The drop off the mid course is crazy. The trick tracks are crazy. The first drop in the back row, row 12, is insane. Oh yeah, ride this ride in the back row. This ride is so cool. The concept of having one person per row is awesome. Basically riding a roller coaster monorail style. I think it's a great gimmick for a ride. I mean, you are tossed around, you are yeeted around, you are everything around. This ride is crazy good. People like to say that this is the worst RMC they've ever done, especially for those that have ridden just about all the RMCs. That doesn't make this a bad ride. For me, this is a top 3 at Great Adventure. This ride is still fantastic. Just give it its proper colors that it deserves, because it just proves that RMC is so good at what they do. And I'm super happy and glad, and hopefully the future for this type of coaster really becomes even more relevant. And we're seeing a lot more of these type of coasters out in the world as well. So this is a proven model that is really going to have some great future things happen. But Jersey Devil truly deserves this spot here at number 3. Oh boy. Coming in at the number 2 spot, we have the king of roller coasters. The tallest coaster in the world that was open. The fastest roller coaster in North America. Or at least the fastest in the world operating until Formula Rossa opened, but yeah. Number 2, Kingda Ka. And there's a lot of reasons. I was contemplating on putting this actually at number 4. And the reason for it is that I've always felt that this ride could have been better if it had a longer layout. If this ride had a much longer layout, this would have been easily number 1. And unfortunately, I've always thought of like, oh, it's a fantastic launch. The top hat is amazing. Everything about this ride is just bread, butter, awesome. Peanut butter meets jelly. It's fantastic. Fantastic launch. You'll never get to experience something like that again. And now that's gone. One of the greatest things about this ride has just been being able to experience this ride with other people that have grown up with it more than I have. And sure, I've not ridden this ride since like a while, right? And this is like the first year I ever had a chance to get on Ka, and it's fantastic. I mean, seeing this ride having to leave like this sucks, but in terms of how rides have been running this whole season, this ride has been fantastic this season. From an operational standpoint, this is probably the best it's ever run. And there's like maybe a week or two where it was like down for like that whole period of time. But other than that, this ride has been up and moving. The whole last weekend, the last 4 days, where it was basically seamless. There was like one rollback on Saturday, but Sunday, I don't even think there was one breakdown on Sunday. Like they were switching off a train on and off. Like they're continuously running two trains as much as they could. They had operators filled to the brim in the station. Seeing this thing run in day and nighttime, fantastic. And the best part of it all was just seeing the whole community come together to say goodbye. And it's really just power of the people at that point, and how we coaster enthusiasts, general public, actually came together for one day to say goodbye to something that wasn't even confirmed until like a week or so after by the park itself. And I mean, this was like, it was a rough day, don't get me wrong, and obviously this is a whole nother discussion for another day, but from a ride standpoint, this is could be considered the best ride on the planet. Obviously, the intensity of that launch is what puts it here. However, I'm not going to go on too long with it because I feel like I'm getting off topic. Because, in my personal opinion, as much as Kingda Ka meant a lot to Great Adventure, I feel like there was another roller coaster that was added around the same time as it that just has more emphasis and impact on Great Adventure. So, this is it. We have finally made it to the number one spot, my favorite roller coaster of the 2024 season at Six Flags Great Adventure. The gold medal goes to none other than the Raging Bull, El Toro, in Plaza del Carnaval, a ride that's so intimidating and awesome that it has its own section to itself. And there's a reason for it, because it is the bull. Ole, ole, Mr. El Toro himself, number one. This wooden coaster is so good. Yes, it was rough. It was rougher than it has been in the past. Guess what? I don't care. This ride is fantastic. I've ridden nearly 120 coasters as of now, and my gosh, this ride is top 3. It's that good. It could be butter smooth. It's probably still top 3. It could be rough as nails. It is probably top 3. This ride has dodged so many bullets in the past. I mean, yes, this has been a really rough patch in terms of just overall smoothness for the ride this year, but thankfully for the offseason, it should be getting the work it deserves. It closed like a couple of days earlier than it should have in the season, but they basically started off-season track work on it essentially immediately once they said, okay, we're going to keep it closed for the rest of the season, because honestly, it deserves it. They deserve to have Intamin come down and really give this thing a good retracking, because it's a great ride and it deserves it. Especially with the whole idea that a lot of rides are starting to get cut. Now, hearing of all this, like obviously losing Ka, losing Lantern, Twister, Parachute Tower going down, potentially Cyborgs on that chopping block as well, and Skyway, and we're losing all of these rides here, and this is a ride we can't afford to lose. Everybody knows that any day could be the last day of El Toro, because if it has one more big issue, this ride's done for. They're not going to even attempt, like they're on their second strike with this ride. 3 strikes, you're out. Hopefully all this lovely work that goes into El Toro in the offseason really pays off, because this ride is so good. And really make sure you get on out here to ride El Toro as much as you can, because 1, it's a fantastic roller coaster, but number 2, it deserves the love of the people, because it's that good of a coaster. It is a legendary ride in its own right. It became a legend the second it opened, and this ride never lets up. You're on the back of a bucking bronco. It's exactly what it feels like. this ride deserves the title of the king when it comes to Great Adventure coasters. That is, I will not deny Kingda Ka will always be the king of coasters, but at Great Adventure, the throne belongs to El Toro, in my opinion. Once again, the saving grace of Great Adventure this season has been the roller coasters, and I hope you enjoyed my top 14 list of the rides from the 2024 season. Obviously, for next year's list, it'll be much different because we will be without Kingda Ka and we will be without Green Lantern. So it'll make the list very interesting to see how things change, especially now that we're adding Flash Vertical Velocity to that list. It'll be very interesting to see how everything shifts from that point forward. But I hope you guys enjoyed my top 14 ranking of all the coasters at Six Flags Great Adventure. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Always thank your ride operators, and have an amazing rest of your day. I will see you in the parks. Goodbye.
Here we go.
Park set. Take that. Park set. Take that.